Hello, this is Derek Hansen for StrengthPowerSpeed.com. This is our 17th episode of our Performance Concepts Chat. We're getting up there. We're amassing a large library of conversations and interviews, and I think the next couple, are going to get even more interesting, including this one. And this one was with Charlie Weingroff. I had a chance to touch base with Charlie in May, through April and May, through a couple of different events that I had been presenting at, and we had some side conversations about some of the projects he's working on, and he'll touch on that in the interview. And I wanted to spend more time talking about those specific cases, but what we did end up talking about was a DVD project that he had put together, and it's going to be released anytime now, and I encourage people to check it out, particularly after you listen to what he has to say in this podcast. And I wanted to gravitate towards the content of those videos, and I had a chance to preview them. And I think the interesting thing for me is that he does get very, very personal and, for lack of a better word, intimate with the audience that he presents to, and gets into a lot of different areas that maybe aren't directly training issues, but it does relate to, I think, his experience in the industry and working with different people. And those are the things that interest me, because it becomes more of a philosophical discussion about why he does what he does, whether it's on the performance side, whether it's on the education side, how he looks at things from a big picture point of view, where he sees that he brings value. And I think that's important. A lot of us are always searching for a niche, or what separates us from other people. And sometimes being a generalist, or being somebody that can bring pieces together in a very efficient and effective way, is very valuable. And I think with his background on both the rehabilitation side and the performance side, and I have other friends like that, as we touch on in the discussion, he brings a different look to an organization. And there are some pitfalls to that as well. If some people don't want to be told that they need to look at something differently, and don't want to have an outside person coming in, and I've experienced that myself. So when you talk to Charlie about these items, you find that he's very passionate, and he has a lot of enthusiasm behind it, and he even admits that maybe sometimes people don't like that. And he's gotten a lot of feedback that's positive, but certainly there are detractors, and even with some of the stuff I present, I don't expect everybody to really grasp onto it and go, this is the right way. And I think that's just the way life is, and especially in this industry, the performance industry, there's many different ways you can arrive at your destination. So, like I said, philosophically, very interesting conversation. I hope you get something out of it. I hope it makes you, try to learn more about Charlie and what he's doing, and ask good questions about what he's doing. And if you have a chance to talk to him, or if you want to send in any feedback to us, force him to answer some questions. Don't be afraid to put people on the spot, because I think he enjoys that. I think he enjoys the mental gymnastics around that. And I think it's important for all of us to question things, look at things differently, and I think he's come to a place where he really embraces that approach. So I hope you enjoy our talk with Charlie Weingroff, and we look forward to some of your feedback. But Charlie, I wanted to talk to you about a DVD product you have coming out. You allowed me to preview it, which was a really good way to spend Father's Day. So but the interesting thing is, I had all these questions about specific projects you're doing, specific athletes, specific teams. And then when I looked at the DVD, I thought, hey, let's start talking about concepts. Let's start talking about the details around why you're making the decisions you are with the athletes that you're working with. So I'm going to start, rather than finishing with the DVD, I'm going to start with the DVD. And first question I have for you is, what was your goal in doing this talk and producing a DVD? Because it's very well produced too. I got to say that the production value is very high. So you had an intent here, and you had a message or a process you wanted to convey. So what was your real goal?
The Well, I can take the cool part first. I'm very flattered that you comment on the production value. Um, and it really ties into the whole answer to everything where the first DVD 6 years ago was just a brain dump at the time. And 3 years later, I like even after the first one, I'm like, I'll never do another DVD. There's no way I'm gonna be able to do 14 to 20 hours of content at this pace. And that was also very early in my speaking career. I tend to think that with practice, I've continued to maintain high energy over very long periods of time because I'm very fit to speak. But it's really another 3 years, so three pit stops over a 6 year period where this is where I'm at. And it's just ironic that it's been a congruent period of time at which I felt like I could do this. I could take 3 days and just show you where the last 3 years has brought me. Because like right now, like I have no idea if I'll ever do another DVD. But I would have said the same thing in November of 2013 when we filmed two, and I would have told you the same thing whenever we filmed. I don't even remember when we filmed the first one in 2009 or 2010, but that's really the purpose of just this is what motivates me. And if there's a little bit of a message, we just talked a little bit offline. I'm not. I've never. I really don't understand why people don't talk about these things as much. Like Mike Boyle, like is a mentor. Maybe you're not interested in talking to me if not for the platforms that Mike Boyle has given to me over the last several years. You know, one of his things is like the Simon Sinek program and book of Start with Why. Okay, a lot of what T equals R3 is about is why I do what I do and why I believe what I believe. It's also part of a zebra doesn't change its stripes. I'm not terribly concerned if it doesn't meet the standards of what someone else would decide. I'm just saying this is why I do what I do.
Mhm.
For all we know, tomorrow there's stuff on there that I would never do. I don't know that. Just like Mike Boyle, I'm going to reserve the right to change my mind whenever I damn well please. So the DVD is just a world, a window into the world of how I think and why I do what I do. I feel really good about saying that perhaps unlike some other individuals of interest, that not that they're not intelligent or worthy of listening to. I do every single thing that I say, every single thing, and I'm very lucky that I have a lot of different environments that different things have a place for me. I don't profess to be expert at any of those things, but I might be one of the few people I'm kind of okay saying that really has this peripheral vision. There's some compliments that I really feel good about, and when some people say that you're able to see the periphery of the human physical development process that maybe other people don't see. I really don't think of it as I'm doing something special, but I think what we're trying, like what the agenda was to expose really what has motivated me that has taken me to certain things, but also taken me away or created some distance to certain things, because I do think that we can all be helped by being told what not to do. And I think my speaking style and what we try and do on the DVD taps into a lot of emotion, and that I think we know that to be the most powerful way to coach and create change is to tap into emotion. And sometimes that's a risky journey because I think sometimes people hate to be shown the truth. They hate the truth. This is why I believe it's the truth, and I try to go to great lengths. I think over now I think 8 DVDs I think are on eight discs, whereas in the past we've done 6 or 7. So this is either 7 or 8, and this is why I do what I do. It's cool if it's you do different. That's but I try to show that we really are all doing the same things.
Now it's interesting. One of the first things you open with was that you say that you're nervous, and I can kind of kind of empathize with that, because I know for the same reason you said, I'm not nervous presenting. I'm nervous about what you take away from this and what you guys, if I've conveyed the message and you guys got something out of that. Can you talk a bit about that?
I have this incredible disdain and fear of losing, and that's all it is. It's like when you go out there, you could be as confident as you want in what you can control, but you can't control how other people do what they do. Like I would tell young therapists or coaches, I can't explain why they do what they do. I don't know. I don't know why, and I truly don't. But it doesn't mean I'm not interested. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to try to find out if I think there's value. But I think the other reason I was nervous, though, was because I didn't have my voice the day before. Like literally.
Oh, really?
So we filmed on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I think Tuesday night I started to have a little pit, and then Wednesday it would seem like I was sick, but I wasn't. Like it would sound like I was sick. Thursday, I worked for Thomas Plummer on the way up to Providence or Warwick, where Perform Better's headquarters is, and like I couldn't talk. And then like that night at dinner, I couldn't talk. Then Thursday night driving, the rest of the way, like 2 hours, and then we didn't start till lunchtime on Friday. I had enough of a voice. And actually, to go back to one of the things you started with, the production value, all of those dudes, all the guys filming and their equipment, it's all from WWE.
Oh.
That's on the second DVD. I made the commitment to I want to continue to do things that no one else is doing, and I think now, is it a smart business choice to pay the freight to use them? Well, you know what? I'm going to do something different that other people aren't doing and create. I think on the second one, we were the first, like in our little genre, if you will, hour, whatever that means, to have 4 cameras, and the level of, like those guys know. So one of them is a good friend of mine named Mike Leonardi, who has been a writer for WWE, and he was a producer before. That's how he's the one that kind of brings it all together. So the production value and the cameras. And then Leonardi actually knows a lot of the material because he's in the profession to a degree. So he can direct the other guys on what to do. So this was the same crew to film the second one. So they know me a little bit, and they know how to film. Like this is their job to like convey emotion. They also know how to rig their systems so that my voice didn't sound like a frog. So it was that might have been too why I was nervous, but always nervous. Like right now. Am I going to lose sleep? Probably not. But like, I want someone to listen, and I want to be able to help them, because here's one thing: I don't even know if I want to be better at not being good at when people don't want help, and it's like I don't get it. Like there are people that completely reject and really have a very publicly negative opinion of me. And yeah, that's like a bee sting. I'm not going to say it doesn't matter at all, but bee sting goes away and it's fine. But I talk a lot about that on the DVD because I'm trying to provide a message where I'm not even opening that window for someone to really be personally offended. And if they are, hey man, like that's not what I tried to do. And that's always a very nerve-wracking. Like right now, just talking about it and being like truly emotional, and not that I'm gonna cry, but like, being like I'm like explaining, why I'm speaking even in such a way, and that's nervous. Like you don't, or if you go up in front of the room, it's like there's times not so much on a DVD, but in certain conferences, like I'll try to be funny. Like maybe that's not a shirt and tie scientific conference. But at certain general population fitness where I have a lot of speaking opportunities, you're not going to get to them if you're not entertaining. And like I'm at a point where they kind of expect me to be entertaining. So like when we go to see a comedian, like we always think they're good, but they might think they suck. But when people laugh and there's good energy in the room, like you just start to talk and like everything works and every joke is funny. And then when you hit them with the punchlines that you're trying to educate on, it's a much more fertile, positive emotional background. So the quality of the film production, them playing with my voice, them knowing me, where I'm going to stand, what I want to do, it's all a big part of what I was trying to accomplish, which I think ties into a lot of the clinical things as well.
Do you think that because you bring this emotion, this passion, this entertainment value, that maybe that's what people are trying to poke holes in and saying, "Ah, this guy's not pure science guy," and he's bringing all this other stuff, and maybe that's part of it. Maybe people get
I
offended by passion.
No, I'll be honest. From a science standpoint, aside from the internet crowd, where like one of the few ways right now to be relevant on the internet is to just say the opposite of someone that's fairly successful or run the evidence-based card. I don't really get that a lot, and that's I feel very good that even if I had to change a few slides, I can put on a shirt and tie and speak from a clinical aspect. Uh, some of the places that I've been invited, I don't think I'm going to get to go to Qatar if they think I'm just some kind of joker. But it's really interesting because Marco Cardinale, as I know you know very well, is a fantastic colleague, and in his brilliant way of presenting. Has some messages like I don't know why your training in North America is always so influenced by physical therapy, and he's right. But then when we talk, or he brings me and Sam to Qatar for the Trading Load conference last year. They do it every other year. It's like, all right, yeah, like no, we're not just I'm not just some circus act physical therapist, that scratches on your face and all of a sudden you have shoulder motion. There's a lot of so I don't think that is. I think that part of not part of it. I think a big piece of it is that I'm saying things because I truly believe what I'm saying. And if it's different than what someone else thinks, if they did look up to me or they did look to this message, they don't want to learn. They just want to be told that they were right. So now, all of a sudden, like the truth just smacks them in the face, and we have two choices. Do we stop and try to understand, like, wait a minute, like, let me understand what he's saying, because he's probably just trying to help me, and maybe he can't help me. Or we knuckle up, and that's frustrating because usually I'm right, and even if I'm not, I believe I'm right, and the people don't even want to hear it. They don't want to learn. Or the other line I have is everybody's open-minded until they find out everything they know is wrong, and then all of a sudden you find out they're not so open-minded. But I feel very good that if I am committed to having you change your mind, there's this scientific process that we know from Hans Selye, 1936, remodeled in 1956. Even though we often consider that to be part of the physiological process on how we can become resilient to a stressor, in my mind, that's how all human systems change. It has to go through the same process, where it's shock, resistance, compensation, exhaustion. The first process to mental change, learning, is that you have to be made to be very, very uncomfortable. There's a difference between learning and being told things. Those are two totally separate things, and they're both of value. So if I tell you a bunch of things and they happen to fit into your fishbowl, you're now a better coach. But you didn't learn anything. There might be a psychomotor aspect or an executional aspect that you now learned, but that was a very small shock and a very small resistance and a very high supercompensation. But if it's a very tangible change mentally, I got to shake you up. Otherwise, you'll never learn. Like you have to be shocked. And now I'm using that word because it's not my word, and that's a big part of what I try to do on the DVD. I try very hard over the last 3 years so I can circumvent these emotionally, socially negative situations because I hate it. Like I don't get it. There's probably situations that I've lost on things that I really would like to be able to do because of these things, because they don't, like, it's okay if someone knows something that you don't know. And I think the better coaches, or certainly the room that I had there I felt so great, almost And then I did cry on the way home a little bit because it was such an amazing experience, but it wasn't me. Chris Poirier was like, man, like, you killed it. People in there said it was amazing. I said it was all them. I just did what I did. It was because they were the right people to receive the message, and they were okay being shocked, and they were okay going through the development of resistance to this shocking message to them. People aren't interested. They do not want they do not want that. They just want to be told things. Even if they either want to be told something new that doesn't challenge their current thought process, or they want to be told that they're right. And that's not what we do. It's not how anyone changes. It's not how anyone gets better. You stay where you're at, and you're lucky by acquiring, knowledge or skills. That's not learning. Those are two totally separate processes, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I always bring it back to like stand-up comedy. You could have the best jokes, and they could be the funniest jokes in the whole world, but if the audience isn't engaged in that and providing you feedback and this back and forth, it's not going to be a good show, or they're not going to take anything away, right? So I really appreciate that, and being able to, and a lot of the thing that I like about the internet is that you get an opportunity to kind of have your audience find you. And like you've said before, there's going to be people who aren't receptive or don't understand, but guess what? There's a whole bunch of people out there that could. And I think that's the great thing about the information you're putting out is some people, they won't get it. But there is going to be a large proportion of people who do engage your material and try to, incorporate it into their own sort of their system, or whatever you want to call it, their philosophy.
And that's that's a big thing that I say. Like, take concepts and try to put them into your own world. But if you're taking the wrong concepts, that's not what I'm telling. It's not what I'm asking you to do.
Yep.
At that kind of feedback. Well, like, you say, take this and then do it into what you do. I'm like, yeah, but you're taking a lump of poop and trying to put it into your world. That's not, like, there's still this assumption that we can, you still can't attach yourself to things that are just nonsense. And that's a word that I use a lot. But, like, no, hold on. Like, nonsense. No sense. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't mean you're a clown. It just means that what you're saying is nonsense. It doesn't make any sense. And I try very hard to discuss to the people that do want to listen as to what some things are nonsense based on my understanding of physiology and neurology. And I go on to put in these different segments on the DVD, like, don't believe me. But ask someone who is my senior and my superlative in this particular topic, but ask the physiologist that doesn't even know why you're asking. Like, he doesn't have any emotional connection to coaching or neuromuscular rehabilitation or pain science. He's like, a pulmonologist that just sits in a lab all day. Like, he's like he's the final say because he has no emotional connection. I totally have an emotional connection. I believe what I believe. So if you don't like what I'm saying, go ask somebody else who doesn't even care. And then they're probably going to say the same thing as me, where certain strategies, and it's the people that are so stuck on those strategies because they're taught with the exact same principles that I'm doing, tapping into emotion, but doing so in a very exclusive fashion, meaning this is the only way. And you have to do my stuff. And I'm not offended by people having, like, levels of courses. I think that bothers a lot of people. No one should ever be ashamed for making money. It's your pillow that you go to sleep on at night. That doesn't bother me in the least. But when they're teaching nonsense and doing so in a fashion that creates, for lack of a better word, a cult, they now believe this foolishness that, from the outside looking in is just ridiculous. And there's slivers, even big chunks of things that are really, really valuable that are shared by other models. And I try really hard to use undeniable words, like words that have no leeway. Like, this is not my word. This is something that the science book says. This isn't my opinion. This isn't my interpretation. And we're gonna. Yeah, and again, like, if I already get hate mail, I even got, I talked about on the DVD, I got like phone calls. Like I don't mind. I'm not gonna say who it was, but this was a young man who I'm pretty sure has less than 5 years experience. So he obviously reached the threshold of knowing everything. I thought highly of him. I mean, I would have said, yeah, the dude's he's doing really good work. He called me and left a message because I didn't pick it up at the time. Says, I'm gonna keep calling you all night until you call me back. That's how angry he was about clinical stuff. Clinical stuff. So it's real. It's real, and that's one of my best friends, Patrick Ward, who I know you know. Many years ago, I had him here in the city to do a one-day seminar. Same kind of thing, like here, just brain dump. Imagine Patrick talking for one day and trying to explain his entire training thought process. And he had still pictures of two characters from Matrix, and one of them was Morpheus, who we know that character, and the dude that was in charge of the city, his name was Commander Locke, and I actually have the video of it that I now put in my talks where they're arguing, and Commander Locke goes to Morpheus is like, not everybody believes what you believe. And Morpheus says, my beliefs do not require them to. And that's like a lot of what we've been talking about here. Like, this is just what I do. Like, I don't know why you even care. Like, if you hate what I'm saying, like, first of all, that person's probably not going to buy the DVD. But if it's something like this where it's an open source thing, like, shut it off, man. Like it's okay. Like, we can talk about other things. Like, we can talk about, the Celtics and Sixers, trading first round picks or something. Like, we don't have to talk about things that have such an incredible emotional experience. But because of the internet, now you have something. Like, you have this emotional thing, and that's what a cult is. That's like, we didn't have that before. I think your role in the internet is a little bit junior to mine. Not that you weren't on it, but you didn't have this podcast. I know about you for years because of my Canadian heritage. but the internet creates like a home for people, and it creates friends by name, but they're not really your friends. Like, you just have things in common, and then when you find out you don't have them in common anymore, you get angry. You're like, you made this wrong investment, but they were never your friends in the first place. And these are things that I try to like. It's like pedagogy. It's like breaking down the teaching process, and how can you, because I do believe that I have things that can help people help other people. And if I really want that to happen, you put your hand in the dirt, and when they move that football, you go. And this is my way of embodying that process.
Now, you talk a bit about clinical and versus practical, and you kind of wear two hats, I'd say. And there's a bunch of people like yourself, like some of my mentors, like Rob Panarello, worked in physical preparation, physical therapy, Don Chu, a few others. Do you find yourself, and I've heard this from them, do you find yourself when you're in a clinical rehab setting that you bring in more of your practical physical preparation side, and vice versa? Like, you kind of switch depending on what audience you have, and rather than just talking along the same lines, you bring something new into the fold. Do you find yourself doing that a lot?
I think to the listener, yes, because I feel like I just want to be able to, like, just ask me a question, and then I can tell you, why I have the answer. But it doesn't work like that. You have to have slides, and you have to have direction, etc. Because quite honestly, to me, I don't see what someone else would call clinical, which I'm guessing is like physical therapy or rehabilitation.
Yeah.
And practical, which maybe we'll call general preparedness or special preparedness, as a strength coach.
Yeah.
I don't see those processes in any way to be exclusive of each other. They're one process. We're just requiring maybe a more keen evaluation, where now if I call myself a physical therapist, my evaluation process is going to take me to the solutions that I know as a physical therapist. And if I'm a strength coach, my evaluation process, whatever it may be, is going to only take me to the solutions that I know. I more look at, I'm going to try to look at this situation, and this is how you can take it outside of the human and look at the businesses, etc. Like, I'm going to use metrics and a thought process to actually take me as far away from what I'm good at doing. Because if I can get away from what I do, then it's honest. Then it's like, it's got to be right because I have no bias. If I'm going to say, this is like, I don't know a lot about nutrition. I do what smarter people tell me to do. I hear it's a pretty good idea to not eat gluten and dairy. So if I can look at the situation though and find out, hey, Derek, here's what I can do. But I'm going to tell you right now, I think the best situation is for you to get some blood work and have your nutrition analyzed, because young men that are strong and fit don't get pathological stress fractures in their femur. Like nutrition and biochemistry is really where I think we're going to find this answer. I don't know what to do. My physical therapy evaluation is not to decide what I'm going to do 3 times a week for 4 weeks. It's going to be, do I send you to the surgeon, or do I look you in the eye and tell you that I can help? That's a different process. So that's the thought process that I take. And again, I have a model that I think allows for this. Like, it's everything. Like, there's 6 interventions that I'm not good at all of them. I don't think I'm good at any of them, but I might be better at some. Where there's medical, of which I have skills of part of medical because I don't know how to do surgery. And now that I'm not involved with the Marine Corps, I can't order imaging in the states that I work in. I can't order medicine like I could when I was working at MARSOC. So there's medical, there's fitness, and I think I have some solutions at that level. There's nutrition, where I don't have very many. There's sleep, where I don't know anybody that has a lot of really great solutions. So that's 4. Psychology is 5. Well, I think we're all psychologists, and no one's good at psychology. The best comedian is not going to get to everybody. And then number 6, load management, which again, I think I have some skills. So we have to look at things where all 6 of those solutions have to be put up front. And it's really a lot of what I learned at MARSOC. In a Marine Special Operations team, there's 14 men. There's no women yet, but I don't mean to say that in the wrong way. The CO and the XO are going to analyze the different situations, and then somebody runs up front and does the job. And if it's like EOD, everybody probably knows a little bit about checking the car to see if there's anything there that doesn't belong, to decide if everybody moves forward. But he's the best at it. Like, who's the best way to intervene to improve the human system? And instead of looking at it as rehab and training, I go back to the first DVD where we look at just qualities. Tell me what this person should do in order for them to meet their goals. It can be general population or athletic. And if we look at the quality and it's below industry standard, and you're looking to restore it, those are probably rehab or recovery techniques. Mm-hmm. And then if the quality is at industry standard and the person will meet their goals by increasing it, then it's training. But then when you put the words back into that, there's going to be some things that a therapist is better to improve the qualities. And then there's going to be some things that a non-therapist is going to be better to restore baseline qualities. So I know that this is I'm obviously I'm very close with Rob. As an aside, in my first year in the NBA was 1999, the fall of 1999, and Jason Williams, Jayson, he was coming off what is probably known as one of the worst knee injuries in the history of pro sports. Never played again, blah, blah, blah. Obviously, some of these other things, etc. So he was working on his own. Rich Delatry, who I know you know, who's in that clique, was my strength. I was kind of like assistant trainer by title, and I would help Rich as well. So Jason was with Rich's predecessor named Rich Snedeker. They're both named Rich. So Rich Snedeker was working with Jason separately. And I remember working with Jason, like, because Snedeker would have me look at it as a physical therapist. He had he valued some of the things I could say. And Jason told me, he's like, you remind me of my strength coach from college. I'm like, oh, really? and I didn't know who it was. I was 20-some years old at that time. And he's like, his name was Rob Panarello. Well, one day you're going to meet him. And years go by. I'm in the D League. So I was with the NBA, and then and the assistant coach was a fellow by the name of Rob Wardan, who I still talk to a lot. Rob Wardan started at UCLA, came out of Queens, ironically, and decided to come home. And was part of the Twin Towers at that time with St. John's, played for Louis Carnesecca. And if I'm not mistaken, for a period of time, Rob was the shot block leader in St. John's history, and Jason was the rebound leader. We're on a bus ride because in D League it's all buses, and he said, "You remind me of my strength coach. One day you're gonna meet him." He said the exact same thing as Jason. So as the years go by, Rob had gotten into the speaking circuit, so you start to see his name a little bit. And on Mike Boyle's website, somebody probably took some liberties because it's the internet, you could do whatever you want. And I had never met Rob, but I had known him that these two really key things happened to me. And I went on and I said, like, hey, you know what? Some people, we don't know, whatever it was, and it probably wasn't even in character for me at the time because I've learned the hard way on how to change how I communicate. But, not for nothing, but we haven't done what this man has accomplished. So maybe there's something to what he's saying. And he messaged me offline to thank me for putting up for him. And obviously, this is a man much my senior, maybe not aged to be my dad, but certainly a much older brother. And I told him what the story I just said about Jason and Wardan. And from that point, we've had a very, very close relationship. And it was where the players identified what maybe you're identifying about my message. But I wasn't doing it to copy Rob Panarello and Charlie Francis and Rich Delatry and that group that I know Charlie had such an amazing influence on. I just did it because it seemed to make sense. And I think they would all probably say the same thing. But in order for it to make sense, you have to have some, awareness of what these processes are, and that they're really all the same. We're just picking different qualities and restoring them and improving them, and it all based on evaluation. Evaluation is everything, so then you know who gets to go up front. And that's why the CO is the CO, because he decides who goes up front and does whatever is necessary to move the team forward. So that's, I think the messages that Rob have, to me, it's the same. It's not even this different situation, but the blank stares that I think are generated where, telling the therapist, and I remember it was here, I did my seminar here at Drive in the city, and it was a therapist that I think worked for one of Rob's clinics, and he's like, Rob sent me, and I was like, all right, man, well, I hope you enjoy it, blah, blah, blah. Where in this evaluation model, if somebody has ACL, meaning they are allowed to load, but let's say they're still, you can only do certain things, why can't you throw a med ball off your back as long as it doesn't hurt your knee? You're not loading it. There's no why can't you do that? What is bad about that? And the dude just had a blank face. That's what I get, because it's bulletproof. There's no reason not to, other than maybe the commercial environment and how service is provided. I have a line that I know a lot of people repeat, little 14-year-old girls that are strong don't sprain their ankle. And is there any scientific merit to that? Well, let's really analyze the word science. That means something happens and you believe it'll happen again. I don't think there's a study on it, but why are you having her do pull-ups? She has an ankle sprain. Because little girls that can do pull-ups don't sprain their ankles, or they happen to get better faster. And if we need some kind of wacky linkage, well, if I can have stronger lats and they blend into the thoracolumbar fascia, which then blends into the glutes, and we know that there's some research that says more active glutes, whatever the hell that means, people don't sprain their ankles as much. There's a reality to that statement, but it's kind of silly to create these links that way, but they're not wrong, in my opinion. So that's how I look at it, and I know Rob would probably look at it a lot the same way. There's a lot of people that don't even know I'm a physical therapist. And there's a lot of people that think the other way. There's a researcher that talks about all you need to do for your core is just put a heavy bar on your back. And I had a challenging response to that because I don't believe that. I think putting a bar on your back is a really good idea for certain reasons. And without knowing who I was, he's like, yeah, how much can he squat? And then a bunch of people laughed, and that was the end of the conversation. Because even today, I can still squat more than a lot of humans. So that was no. I don't look at them as different. I look at it. The evaluation process is probably different, where it's going to take you to as many solutions as possible.
I know, and you've been involved with different organizations, and when you walk into an organization, be it a professional team or an Olympic team, and you see that those two things are polarized, where you have the physical therapists and athletic trainers on this side of the room, and then you have the strength coaches on the other. How do you approach that? How do you bring that together with your skill set?
Yeah, in 2017 or 2006. It's sobering. That's the first word, and it's like, oh man, because what I have to say is like, guys, like I'm gonna tell you right now, like my stuff is not gonna work because in order for my stuff to work, you guys totally have Plan B and Plan C, but you don't have Plan A. In order for Plan B and C to work, that's why you're struggling. But Plan A is probably done by someone that has skills that you don't have. So we all have to look at this process the same way. I prefer not to talk about some of the things, the teams.
No specifics.
I'll be happy to talk about Canada basketball because that's my thing. But when other organizations pay me or individuals pay me, but what I can say, I was with a team a little while ago, a couple years, and it was in the off season. So the strength coaches brought me in. And of the medical staff, the physical therapist was there. And they were saying, yeah, he's a fan. Like, whatever, of course, like, whatever. And so he spent the day with us, and, we just talked, and we all trained, and et cetera. And I'm like, I told the strength coach, who was actually the assistant strength coach at that time, the head guy wasn't there. I said, here's the answer to all your problems. The physical therapist, he needs to work in here because he worked with the medical people. And in certain sports, unless you have like what would be determined a frank injury, you don't access them. Now, do they know what to do? That's another story. It seemed like this therapist did know what to do. So how can a therapist enhance the training process? How can a strength coach enhance the rehabilitation process based on tried and true laws of physiology and neurology? We need oxygen to heal. Well, I think the strength coach probably is better at developing adaptations of efficient oxygen transport than the guy who's better than he is at mobilizing the knee. So you just try to explain with logic, and oftentimes logic doesn't necessarily fall on deaf ears. It falls on a deaf culture. Like it just doesn't matter. Everybody believes it. And one of the things I actually have told teams, I said, now look, the wrong person is not in the room, meaning the GM needs to be in the room. We need to have an actual physical facility where everyone is, there's like no walls. I think Mark Verstegen did that the best many years ago when he built Athletes Performance. It was like one building. When Art Horn rebuilt Northeastern a few years ago, the weight room and the training room are really contiguous. There's even a wall there that only has to be there because of the male-female construct in a college setting where they're minors. That wall shouldn't even be there. Like in Athletes Performance, there's no wall. So I think when people can see, and there's easy transport of different areas of the performance facility, it can work. So it does. Things aren't going to work. Like it doesn't. It doesn't mean people have to be dually certified or educated. It's not like all your strength coaches have to be medical people. That's not what I'm saying. But if you use a lens where those 6 things can all be part of it. I worked with an NFL player recently where like the report was Here's what we did to change his groin pain. Here's what I would do in the weight room for the next 6 weeks. And here's what I think you should do with Catapult of what you should expect to see these changes. Because if his training load at least stays the same and his output increases, then you have a winner. So you see, it's like we are able to bring all of them together, medical, fitness, and science, and how it can be really, really practical. Because I told the coaches, I said, you got, like, I'm not telling you what, like, it was groin. So I said, you got a choice, 20 to 100 reps, which is something I believe in. Like, do reps until it doesn't hurt. Like, keep deloading if it means holding on to, like, your TRX so your lunges don't hurt, like, do that. Or oxidative or tempo squats, I call it 2020, because this is the first step. So you got 2 weeks to build up lateral squats where your feet are there and you're just going side to side. Then you go to 2 weeks, you start over and do lunges. And then the next 2 weeks is slide board lateral lunge. I'm like, guys, you didn't he's like, yeah, that stuff's all in our program. I said, okay, well, I want it to be the main lift, which might blow up your plan a little bit, but like, you didn't need me for that. You needed me to poke at his obliques and get off this nonsense of him having FAI because oblique trigger point is, medial groin pain. Look, like, his hip doesn't hurt anymore. Now let's get after it with the training process. And then our watchdog managing Catapult is going to actually see if this process really did anything. But if he's not in pain, then it's a good thing. So, there's the right, it's all about the listener. Because it's so, different. I probably haven't worked with a lot of teams where they don't want that, where they would not bring me in the first place. Or maybe they do want it, but I have to now remind them that they don't have it, so they'd rather not do that. So it's you just and now in 2017, I'd like to think I'm a lot better at communicating and looking for small victories, where in my situation in Marine Corps Special Operations, I wasn't there yet. I learned so much of my failures there that I was coming in like, this is what we're supposed to do, and I was very wrong. I should have taken a longer time frame into what I expected to see. So it's I'd be happy to talk about that situation, but some of the other situations more contemporary, I'll just throw it out, nameless and faceless.
Yeah, you don't need any more controversy. Now, if we talk about specific sports that you're working with, and you talked about specifically in the video, basketball, golf, tennis. Why those sports? Did you gravitate to that? Obviously, you have a basketball history, but is there something about those sports that you like? Is there a preference? Is there something about the things that you do that enhance those sports even more than other sports? Why would you say those three are your primary focus, at least now?
Basketball was my first opportunity in 1998. I hadn't even finished physical therapy school when I got into professional basketball. That was at the minor league level. So being involved in some way, I think there was only like a couple years. I think like 07, 08, and 09 were like the only years that I had no role in elite basketball since 1998. So you just, especially for a lot of that time period being head athletic trainer, you sit right next to the coach, you learn the game.
Yep.
And then always learning to create solutions for what I would be doing. You actually learn the game, you learn what is specific and special to that particular sport. So that's the answer with basketball. Tennis just fell into it. Like, it wasn't, and obviously now I can tell you I have a lot of work with Milos Raonic, another one of our beloved Canadian, where because several years ago I was just dropped into a tennis environment with another great Canadian coach, Myron Grunberg, where it was all juniors. So Milos and his folks from CAA knew that I had some tennis pedigree. But when I got to there, I'm like, Myron, you got to give me your books. Like, I need to learn the game of tennis. So tennis, and I feel like I understand a lot of the, special physical preparedness, maybe not so much specific. I don't know much about what to do with the racket, but I know the physiological demands. And then golf, I would tell you point blank, golf is my love, in terms of, I think in maybe '08, I went to TPI level 1 and just fell in love because there's so much problem solving. It's the most complex single movement of any sport that I'm aware of. It's not the hardest because the ball's not moving, and of course all the golf crowd's going to get mad, but the ball's not moving. I'm not allowed to hit the shutter on my camera, or the caddy yells at you. But the skill of the golf swing itself is the pinnacle of human movement in terms of mobility and control, and how do you maintain mobility and control while you attempt to dump on incredible amounts of physiological resiliency. It's the problem solving is critical, and then it becomes a little bit of a toy to me as well, because the golf crowd is very easy to get riled up by just telling the truth. Like they hate the truth, and like they'll say things like Tiger Woods and Rory are like, these hulking linebackers. I'm like, yeah, what, for like backup freshman team in high school? Like, what are you talking about? Like, and nobody was pissing and moaning about Tiger being a linebacker when he was the greatest golfer to ever live. But maybe because he achieved that body through some silly choices, his body did not maintain resiliency. That's just conjecture, even though it's probably true. So but golf is like all the sports now is problem solving. And now that I have a lot of work in the NFL, it's problem solving and using this incredibly broad lens. That's what I love. Like, so you could probably apply that to any sport and create this, because you take a bigger lens and a broader lens, you're going to see things that other people may not see. So tennis was just by chance, and obviously now I continue to invest in learning about the game. Basketball is it's my thing, and some of these other sports as well. Like I love golf and tennis also because they're white collar sports, so they don't have most players don't have as much an investment into the grizzled, lift heavy things and sweat aspect. So if that bucket is so empty, you have a tremendous opportunity to make them better. They often resist it, but if you find the one guy that'll do it, he's going to leapfrog everybody else because no one else is doing those things.
Now, I also found it interesting that you used examples from golf and basketball to really point out, your interest in assessing the value of doing something and seeing whether they're improving. So in the golf situation, it was, after all this time, we've only improved by 2 strokes. And in basketball, the shooting percentage has actually gotten worse inside the 3-point line. Can you speak to that?
So those are, I don't have it in front of me, but so I'll guess, and somebody can send me a nasty email. 1996 to 2016, on the PGA Tour, we were 2 strokes better. So I think that's what you might be referring to when we have another conversation. So that's real. Like that's like we're better at the score of golf. But when you look at the club that we're using and the inherent equipment changes, maybe that's why we're better. And we're not really better at swinging the golf club or being able to swing the golf club the way we want to whenever we want to, which is mastery of skill. I think a lot of people have great precision of skill. Everybody hits a good one at some point. That means their body can do it. But can they do it whenever they want to under a myriad of conditions? So that's where we're at with golf. Another one that you didn't mention, and then I'll get to basketball because it's where the bulk of my work on this particular topic is. There's something to the effect that, so what's Bolt's best time? 9:59, 9 something like that?
Yeah, I think it's 9:58 now.
Okay. If I'm not mistaken, Jesse Owens' best time was 10:32. Let's just say it is. If you put those two and you do your little Photoshop, Bolt is 14 feet finishing in front of Jesse Owens based on the times. If you take into account the shoes that they know Jesse Owens wore and the surface that Jesse Owens ran on versus Bolt's shoes and the surface now, and you take it to a bunch of physicists who don't care. This isn't my conjecture. This was either on a podcast or something, and you create a theoretical equation as to how much the shoes and the surface are worth, Jesse Owens is like 2 inches behind Bolt. We're not faster. Like, we have not gotten better at the skill of sprinting if over this period of time the greatest in 1932 is only 2 inches or some kind of negligible, like you can't see it with the naked eye how much Bolt beats Jesse Owens if you take into the account of the shoes. Now, here's the data that I think I have memorized in terms of basketball. The shooting percentage over the last 20 years is like 45.4. Okay, so that's the shooting percentage, 45.4%. The standard deviation is 0.6. That means it hasn't changed much over the last 20 years. 4 times it was above the standard deviation. So we'll say the smallest meaningful difference is 1 standard deviation. So 4 out of 20 times it was better than 0.6, meaning there was 46.7. 4 times that happened, and 5 times it was below. Okay, I can get you the numbers that are fact, or you can look on basketballreference.com, so you don't have to trust me, which is I like being able to say things like that. So we're not better at putting the ball in the basket. So over this period of time, let's look at some collateral information that may be of interest. Illegal defense is gone. So Barkley can't sit there and do that and do that. Shaq, so there's no illegal defense. Defensively, you can't foul anybody anymore. We all just watched Lakers and Celtics when McHale, they were shocked that when McHale dropped a hammer on Kareem coming off the right block. So defense is tighter to benefit the game. The 3-point line is closer. Okay, now 3-point shooting is increased, but we know inside. So it's actually easy. You're closer to the basket. You can say whatever you want. It's what you practice and what your skill is good at. Closer to the basket is easier to do. Like it's that's what I'm going to run with. That's my. So under all of those conditions, we're not better at shooting the basketball, or we're not better at putting the basketball in the basket. Okay, not necessarily shooting. So that to me is the skill. Now let's try to understand why. Like, what could be all the reasons that we're not putting the ball in the basket at a better clip? Because we love to be able to say guys are taller and more athletic and we're better fitness and we have better coaches doing X's and O's. But we're not putting the ball in the basket more. Like, we're just not doing that. So the things that we start to analyze, because the bane of my existence, the way we're set up in Canada basketball is usually we have a practice in the morning, and then in the beginning, when I started, we would have 2 a days. Then it became like optional where everybody came. And then it became whoever wants to get extra work. So in my mind, when no one forgot, like at that level, everyone have the degrees of freedom. But that's the first step in analyzing why we may not be better at something. Maybe in the general population, we're not, this person doesn't show good form in a single leg deadlift because they don't even have the joints that can even do it in the first place. It's not a learning. It's not a coaching process. They don't even have the requisite degrees of freedom to do it once. But we keep making them do it, and we load things that are not an effective adaptation. That's not my problem in Canada basketball. They all know how to shoot the ball. So when the ball doesn't go in, why? Well, I don't think they forgot. So this whole idea of what a basketball player has to put up 500 shots a day. Oh, really? You then need to tell me that the reason for 500 shots a day is so we don't get worse, because that's what the data would tell us. You can't tell me so-and-so has to put up at least 500 shots a day so he gets better, because he's not getting better. The facts are that he's not getting better. So what is the real reasons as to why players don't make shots? Why does Corey Joseph not always make the shot at the end of the game? Well, luckily for us, he does, which is really cool. But sometimes players in all sports have a bad day. How did Jordan Spieth go from, on one day, shooting maybe one of the greatest rounds in the history of golf, to what we call choking? And then all of a sudden we say choke, which then leads us to a psychological issue, which again, psychology was one of the 6 interventions, but what does this talk therapy do? And if we start to analyze, well, it's not degrees of freedom. They know how to do it once. Mastery of skill is one of the ways to look at things. And there's a whole cascade of physiology and neurology that would suggest hypoxia and acidosis, which I call an adjustment, is something on the way to happening. The adaptation is like a tangible change. It usually takes time for an adaptation, but the adjustment can happen right away. It's what a lot of some of our friends in the scientific world would say, oh, that's circus PT, that's not real. Well, actually it is real, it's just not going to stick, okay? So if some of these negative consequences haven't stuck yet, well, how did that happen? Well, that's an acidotic bloodstream. Like if we become, if we start teetering into exhaustion, we build up acidosis in the bloodstream. It's not just from lifting. It's a cost to intense training. If we are continually fatigued and we don't take rest periods, we're then delving more into the costly, I didn't say lactic, I said more costly energy systems, because we know everything is everything. So I don't need Martino at University of Georgia messaging me to remind me that there's no such thing as alactic. We know. But there are energy systems that are more costly, particularly if we're trying to maintain high force and power and minimum rest. That's competition. You spend it. But if that's how you always practice and you build up the exhaust of the training process, that makes motor skills at best inconsistent. You didn't forget how to shoot the basketball. You didn't go into a slump where you need to practice your swing. You had non-functional overreaching to acidosis and potentially hypoxia. And then if we can target hypoxia and acidosis, I got room for my physical therapist, and I got room for my strength coach, and I got room for my psychologist. Because we can't necessarily measure dopamine, but if it makes you feel good, you're probably going to have a positive effect on humoral factors. It's not my thing, but I believe it. I got room for the nutrition guy, because we're going to get essential water, which has 8.5 pH, so we can balance that out. But the key thing of where we can create most of our solutions is load management. Coach, stop. Can we just go watch a movie this afternoon? Like, they're not going to get better. The reason they had a bad practice because they were tired. You're going to make them more tired, and we can't even do this. Like, we can't get better. I'm telling you why. You're telling me because when you played, this is what you did. Okay, that's your reason. Here's my reason. At some point, I'm going to back off because you're the coach, and I'm just here to give you reasons. And he does listen to me a lot. And when we talk about load management and the different metrics that we use. But it's like, have certain players that have incredible fitness. Mm-hmm. They're allowed to do, but again, like, are we going to get better? And it's not just strength and conditioning, and it's not just practice. It's bettering. Are we going to get better? And the facts, I take that back. The lines that we can draw to the motor skill mastery process, meaning, can you be who you are as often as possible under as many different conditions as possible? If you want to go with movement variability, that's it. But movement variability adds to movement mastery. Okay, so there's other ways than load management. But load management, in my opinion, is the most costly because you got tired, so now the ball doesn't go in the basket. We're not practicing correctly for our sports. Same thing with golf, because we're not better at golf. I don't know where the sports are that we're better. We probably have to look more towards closed loop individual sports, but I don't know enough about them. I don't know if the pole that they use is better than the pole that they used in 1930. I don't know these other sports. Are we swimming faster? Well, the times appear to be better, but is it because the pool is deeper like it was in Beijing, or they wore these outfits that I don't know those answers. I know about golf. Not so much tennis. I know about basketball. I know a little bit about baseball, where these are, where all of these physiological components are so underwater, but we think that the way to supplement success is by reinvesting in practicing the skill. When in fact, you were never bad in the first place. You just showed up to the dance with this giant piano on your back. And now the more that's now where hopefully some aspects of sports science can then help position medical, fitness, nutrition, sleep, psychology, and load management. Now we're talking. Now we have ways to do this. And one of the studies that I know I'm very proud to say that we published, it was retroactive, so it wasn't like we knew this was happening. But when we have certain physiological compensatory measures, meaning we use omega wave. I'm allowed to say that, and and I'm not saying anyone cares if they agree or not. We use omega wave, and when our players land in particular values of metabolic reaction index, RMSSD, and central nervous system, we win every single time. If we're outside of the metrics that we decide from our measures, not just what the machine says, we lose every single time. I have now a mission to maintain as many players within this range because we have the data that says that good things happen. We also have harder data that says when we have 5 players score 8 points or more, I think we've only lost twice in the history of Canada basketball, not just this generation. So that's where we can start to see things. So now, if I tell that to my coach, maybe he'll make a game plan. Where now there's technical and tactical aspects, and that's out of my league, but I know that these are things that are happening. So I don't know. I can say in basketball, we are not better at the game of basketball. What should we do in the afternoon? We should come in and throw med balls and do tempo runs and cartwheels and forward rolls and mobility stuff. And that's my opinion. That's a risk because that's not the culture. But when we can communicate about this and also be able to walk away and find a small victory in the conversation and not like maybe what I did in Marsoc, then we can change the culture, because I think we have the ability to do that in Canada basketball.
And I don't want to take too much of your time today, Charlie. You're a busy guy. But there was one thing you talked about in the video where you talked about everybody thinks you're just this elite sports guy, but you do have a lot of interactions with general population. And what have you taken from your work with elite sports, and even some of the stuff you just touched on here, and how do you reinfuse that back into the health and wellness part for the general population people you work with? Because obviously, I think a third of the world is now obese now, from the stats they're putting out. And are we getting better there?
The very difficult to say, are we getting better? That's because the general population is so fragmented and segmented. But it's really taking, the difference between elite athletes and general population. Like, how do you keep stripping it back? It's their goals. So, but the evaluation process is completely identical. And now how we implement medical, fitness, nutrition, sleep, psychology, and load management, how we implement them on different grades, that's obviously going to be enormously different, but it's only speaking to the evaluation. And that's where people are overstressed more than anything. So if we say someone's overweight, there was a stressor that their body adapted to by increased fat deposition. It's not to minimize that they're, what this, negative thing, if they hopefully look at it as something they can change. But it's specific adaptation to imposed demand. General adaptation syndrome for all 10 systems of the body, not just physiology. The motor skill acquisition process doesn't change. This is stuff that goes back to the first DVD. And how do we, if you take a general population, do they need to do, they don't need to do anything, any particular lift, because internal systems don't know the difference. I keep saying mitochondria don't mitochondriate any differently, whether you're doing a push press, a clean, or a kettlebell swing. Like, their goals are to look good, have good blood work, feel good. That's not acceptable for a professional athlete. They have to take what they do in the gym and translate it to this other surface on another day and another time. So it's the bigger challenge, I think, in the general population. Again, not so much with me personally for the logistics that it takes and the zip code that I work in Drive 495 in Soho, cheap plug, that they are so deluged with misinformation that they're not stupid. They just know the wrong things. Whereas I don't get a lot of that person, again, number one, for logistics, but number two, if someone is in pain, they're a little bit more susceptible psychologically to follow a message. Like they're so desperate, and I'm the last person sometimes to help them. Whereas that's a quicker process for a professional athlete or someone who really cares about something else because they want to win. It's a different mindset. Do you want to win or do you want to look good? Those are two different processes. And one of the values in general population is they usually get more time to get to the result. The person's like, okay, I know this isn't going to happen overnight. The athlete needs to win on Sunday, and that's so I don't know that they're so different. I think the psychology is very, very different. But the process, like the keen of what I start to call the keen evaluation, is the same. We may not have to dig as deep into some of the metrics, and may never have to, but they may not be a good idea early on because you're going to lose the person. Like you're gonna, and also how you communicate, and I'll have tons of what we'll see in general population is like, well, my serratus, my shoulder's winging and it has upper rotation, so I always thought it was my serratus anterior, and I'm like, all right. Never say that again. and it's not because you're wrong, but I promise I'll explain to you why I don't want you to say it again. And it's about smudging. It's about, when you have all these internal focuses that aren't necessarily correct or may not be the target to solve your problem, in your brain they're like this, but they really should be like that. And if you focus on it, it takes over the neighboring part of your brain, and inputs become far more unpredictable and or amplified. So if a threatening stimulus is there, and that's because the general population cares. The athlete's like, just fix me, man. And no one ever gets fixed. That's a poor term, but that's something they would say. Or I would say that athlete that I mentioned that I saw not too long ago with the groin. I'm not even sure he ever needed surgery on both of his hips by a very reputable surgeon, unfortunately, who's known to be quick with his decision-making at his expertise. You want the surgeon who's going to be like, I'm here when you need me. Like, try everything. Like, you have to use an evaluation. I wish they knew more about what they should do because they'll listen to the surgeon. But at least if we have a surgeon who's, like, needs an evaluation process to find out when they're not the answer. I think we see that as a problem. They listen to the wrong people, and then it's hard to break down that psychology. Wherein athletes, it's less difficult, but not always, because then there's athletes who are really just general population in disguise, and there's certain commercial training methodologies that you can't tell them anything. And that's where I'll just have to say, okay, you have to choose your own hero. I don't know how to communicate with you anymore. Dude, go ahead, man. Put a little rubber band around your ankle and see what happens. And when you need me, I'll get you to the best foot surgeon in hospital special surgery. You keep doing your thing, man.
So we have this project, this DVD project coming out. What else do you have coming up, I would say, in the next year or so? What are you focusing on? I know you've talked to me about some projects. I was fortunate to be able to meet up with you in Connecticut and then in New York. And I know, we're both pretty busy, but it's nice to be able to just see you in person and talk to you about some things. But what do you have going on? And what are you pushing towards?
Yeah, I'm always pushing to figure out ways to grow this thought process via other people. It doesn't mean that I want to make money off of other people doing work, but I think I look at some of the people that I really look up to, like Mike Boyle and Gray Cook and Mark Verstegen. In a lot of areas, people look down upon them because they've achieved certain things, but that's winning. That's in my mind. I'd like to be able to do that. I'll be working with this one. I'll say Indomitian Sue and I we have plans to work together during the NFL year, and I can as much I'm trying to as I don't make eye contact. I want to think about what I want to say. I want here, this is what I've had this conversation with him to a degree. I look back in some of the things that I wish I could do differently. The greatest athlete to ever live, in my opinion, is the most talented athlete to ever live, in my opinion, is Allen Iverson. To be able to do what he could do, I don't care about pound for pound. It doesn't even matter. I saw him throw a football 60 yards with one step. You know, I remember in 1999, I sat on the floor for the first time watching him and Steph. I was with the Nets, him and Stephon Marbury. It was like watching feet go like this. Like, it was unbelievable to me.
Yeah, just watching his football highlights blows me away. Not
Yeah,
even basketball highlights.
yeah. So I bring up Allen, and what I want to take it to what I want to be able to help with Sue is, Allen is in a tough situation at the time. You know, as far as I know, I don't see him a lot, and when I do, it's usually, it's not the type of conversation that I think he even wants to have. But if I ever had a chance to see him, I'd be like, I'm sorry. Because, as a 20-something strength coach, and I could argue about all the different constraints that I had to deal with when I was in Philly, if I could have helped him, if I even knew a little bit of what I knew now, and then including how to make small battles, maybe I would have lasted longer there. Maybe he wouldn't. He would have had one more deal. He would have gotten that last deal, for 3 years, 12 million or something. Now, it's on him to be able to feel good about coming off the bench. But maybe if I was able to help him, it would have been his choice of when he moved on from the game. And that's the exact conversation I had with Sue not too long ago, where he doesn't need to play, but he wants to play. And I said, if I can help you, I want it to be your choice on when you walk away from this game. It's not going to be because your body has physically betrayed you. Because if I could have helped Allen physically more than what I did, maybe he wouldn't have some of the financial troubles that I'm very happy one day won't be a problem, because he's got the lump sum coming from Reebok, because it was like a lifetime deal. So that's really what I want to accomplish with any older athlete. When we even talk with the young guys in Canada, they do this stuff. It won't be this deal. It won't be the next deal. You'll be 120 deep. But if you want to continue for that last deal, then if you do the stuff that we're teaching you now in your middle 20s, I think you'll have that. It'll be your choice to do it. Tristan's going to get another deal after this. But if he wants another one, I want that to be his choice, so he can take care of his family and enjoy the game the way he wants to. And that's really where we're at. Now, maybe a little different situation with Ronick. We need to dominate. Like this, the 138 mile an hour serve. I asked him, what's your wingspan? He's like, I don't know. I mean, this is 6'5", and his wingspan might be 7 feet just by eyeballing it. And then I understood, like, well, how does he not know that? Well, because there's no selection process in tennis. In basketball, if you were 6'5" and had a 6'10" wingspan, people would snatch you up, so you would know. So again, with him, just trying to put everything that we've talked about into a package that can help him win matches and make a whole gang of money. And and then obviously with Canada basketball, we're going to start our quadrennial this summer. The qualification process is now very, very different, where we're not going to have the NBA players because we have to qualify during the NBA year. We're not going to have them all the time. We'll have them in June, and we'll have them in September. I think it would be, well, look, I was about to say it would be a big upset if we are not in a position when they do become available. But, hey, we lost to Venezuela 2 years ago, which there's no one in the world expected that to happen. We walked into that game with a 35-point differential. We were 7-1. We had just beaten Venezuela 4 times that summer, and we lost at the end of the game. And if there's anything that I can do, like, I blame me. Like, I don't know what it was that I did wrong, but everybody could have done something better. And as we move on to keep growing as a program, and when people come in and spend time with us, and they're like, all right, you actually do what you say. The level of communication, the attention to prime targets, in this case, physiologically, hypoxia and acidosis, stratified technology across the board. It's exciting to be able to have the wherewithal, both functionally and to a degree financially, to run the program that we want to run. So those are the things outside just again, unlike some of your other heroes on the internet, I have a schedule right now. And when we're done, I'm seeing patients or clients, and you can get on my schedule, and I don't foresee not doing that. And it's an exciting time to be able to do what I say. And obviously, I love talking about it. I think I dominated this conversation far more than I would prefer. But maybe I'll do a podcast too. And
Well, hey, it's really about it's about you. I'm not gonna. There's not much I need to say. I am very interested in following up with you, and I'm particularly interested in the tennis project. And it's not because I'm Canadian. I just think it's a good example right there of somebody who's probably succeeded based on a lot of talent and physical qualities. And he has a lot of buckets that you can start to fill up with other things, right? So I find that pretty interesting.
well, we're gonna see how it goes. It's he's the right kid, I think. The agent is the right agent, and I'm going to do my best to look at this long term, where we don't need to do everything right away. We don't need to spend $100,000 on tech. Let's do a couple things. Right now, 5 weeks ago, the kid wasn't playing. He had to pull out of Miami.
Yeah.
So that's when we started. He's playing. We're happy, and we're gonna. This time last year, he was in the finals of Wimbledon. That's where we're going to try to be in a couple weeks.
That's great. Well, thanks for taking the time, Charlie, and I enjoy talking to you and just getting a feel for the things that you're thinking about and just seeing your enthusiasm and passion behind them. So thank you very much for taking the time. So if you have any questions about, the content that Charlie had addressed in our interview, I encourage you to send us some feedback. Contact him. I'm going to be putting down his contact information and his website and where you can get more information on his resources on the description of our site and on all the social media sites. So again, I don't know how many of you have had a chance to really engage some of the speakers that we've had, but by all means, do whatever you can. That's what we're trying to create, more of a discussion, not just one-way communication. And I think he's probably a good person to start that with, just because I think he wants to hear from people and see how they perceive his information. And like we said, some of it's going to be positive and some of it not positive. But I think you learn you take the good with the bad, especially as you get older and you put it into perspective. And maybe it does modify or change the way that you present yourself or present your information. And I know I'm constantly trying to figure out how people are perceiving my information and if it's useful. And sometimes I get more worried when people say positive things than negative things, because I'm like, well, is it really that good? Maybe they're just being nice. So sometimes it's not a bad thing to hear negative stuff, negative reviews. So, check us out on Strength Power Speed on YouTube, Strength Power Speed on Facebook and Twitter as well. And I'll keep posting on these sites, and I encourage you to engage us. That's what we're really going for here. And if I have a chance to meet people in person, and that's a great thing about doing the podcast. Like people are saying, "Are you making money on that?" I'm like, "No, I'm not. It's costing me time." But the great thing is it does create discussion when I do meet people in person, and I even just enjoy rapping with people in the podcasts. And like I've always said, we have great discussions after the camera goes off, and perhaps I should probably keep the camera rolling. So thank you very much, and please continue to follow us on Strength Power Speed.